I never believed in ghosts or ghost stories. At least, not until the day I moved into 42 Willow Street. It was supposed to be a fresh start. A quaint, Victorian house in a sleepy town, far from the bustle and the noise of city life that had worn me down. As I turned the key in the lock for the first time, a shiver ran down my spine. I chalked it up to excitement, or perhaps the autumn chill in the air. The house creaked as I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight, streaming through the grimy windows. I made a mental note to give the place a thorough cleaning before unpacking. As I explored the rooms, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Eyes seemed to follow me from the old paintings on the walls, their subjects' expressions frozen in time. I laughed nervously, telling myself I was being ridiculous. That first night, I tossed and turned in my makeshift bed, just a mattress on the floor of what would become my bedroom. The house settled around me, wood groaning and pipes clanking in the darkness. But beneath those ordinary noises, I heard something else. Whispers, faint, indistinct, but unmistakably there. I sat up, heart pounding. "Hello?" I called out, feeling foolish, even as I did so. Silence answered me. I lay back down, pulling the blanket tight around me. It was just my imagination, I told myself. The stress of the move playing tricks on my mind. But the whispers came again, a little louder this time. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was urgent, insistent. I fumbled for my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but empty corners and shadowy furniture. I barely slept that night, dozing fitfully as the whispers ebbed and flowed like a tide of secrets just beyond my comprehension. When dawn finally broke, I was exhausted but relieved. Surely, in the light of day, last night's fears would seem absurd. As I made my way downstairs to brew some much-needed coffee, I froze. There, on the dusty hardwood floor of the living room, were footprints. Small, bare feet had left perfect impressions in the grime. Footprints that led from the center of the room to the wall, where they simply stopped. My coffee forgotten, I approached the wall with trembling hands. I ran my fingers over the faded wallpaper, searching for a hidden door, a seam, anything that could explain the impossible trail. There was nothing. A soft giggle behind me made me whirl around. For a split second, I saw a small figure dart around the corner into the hallway. "Wait," I called out, rushing after it. But the hallway was empty, all the doors closed. I leaned against the wall, my heart racing. This couldn't be happening. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe kids from the neighborhood had broken in to play a prank. Yes, that had to be it. I spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself of that explanation as I unpacked and cleaned. But as twilight fell, bringing long shadows and uncertain light, my certainty began to waver. The whispers started again, more distinct now. "Help us," they seemed to say. "Find us." I huddled on the couch, every light in the house blazing. "Who are you?" I asked the empty room. "What do you want?" The temperature plummeted, my breath clouding in front of me. The lights flickered, and in that moment of darkness, I felt a small, cold hand grasp mine. I jerked my hand away. A scream caught in my throat. When the light stabilized, I was alone again, but the chill lingered in the air and in my bones. I couldn't stay here. I had to leave, to run, to escape whatever madness was taking hold of me. I grabbed my keys and rushed to the front door, only to find it wouldn't budge. I yanked on the handle, threw my shoulder against the solid wood, but it was like trying to move a mountain. Panic rising, I ran to the nearest window. The glass was cool and unyielding beneath my palms, no longer seeming like a barrier, but a prison wall. "Let me out," I shouted, pounding on the window. Outside, the world continued undisturbed. A neighbor walked their dog, oblivious to my plight. I screamed and waved, but they didn't even glance my way. It was as if I no longer existed in their world. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it did nothing to block out the sound. Words became clear, overlapping in a cacophony of pleading voices. Help us. Find the truth. Don't let them win. Save us. I sank to the floor, overwhelmed. I don't understand, I whimpered. What do you want from me? The room grew colder still, and a mist began to form in front of me. It coalesced into the shape of a young girl, no more than 8 years old. She wore an old-fashioned dress, her long hair in neat braids. Her eyes were sad, but there was a flicker of hope in them as she gazed at me. You can see me, she said, her voice echoing strangely. You can help us. I stared at her, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. Who are you? My name is Emily, she replied. I lived here a long time ago. We all did. As she spoke, more shapes appeared around her. Children, adults, the elderly, all with the same translucent, misty quality. Their faces were etched with sorrow and desperation. Emily continued, we can't leave. We're trapped here, and we need your help to set us free. I looked around at the ghostly assembly, my fears slowly giving way to a mix of awe and pity. How? I asked. How can I help you? An elderly man stepped forward. The truth, he said, his voice as dry as autumn leaves. The truth has been buried for too long. You must uncover it. What truth? I pressed, struggling to understand. Emily's small hand reached for mine again. This time, I didn't pull away, despite the icy touch. The bad man, she whispered. The one who hurt us. He hid the evidence, but it's still here, in the walls. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the ghostly cold. You mean, you were all? I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. The spirits nodded solemnly. But why me? I asked. Why now? The house has been waiting, the elderly man explained. Waiting for someone who could hear us, see us. Someone strong enough to face the darkness and bring it into the light. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This was insane. Ghosts weren't real. Hidden evidence of mass murder? It sounded like the plot of a bad horror movie. And yet, I couldn't deny what was right in front of me. What do I need to do? I heard myself ask, hardly believing I was going along with this. Emily's face lit up with a sad smile. Look behind the walls, she said. In the attic, that's where it all began. As suddenly as they had appeared, the spirits vanished, leaving me alone in the now warm living room. The front door swung open with a creak, no longer an impassable barrier. I stood on shaky legs, my mind reeling. I could leave now, walk away from this madness, and never look back. But the memory of those pleading faces, of Emily's hopeful eyes, held me in place. With a deep breath, I turned towards the stairs. The attic awaited, and with it, the answers to a long-buried truth. As I took the first step, the whispers returned, urging me on. Find us, they murmured. Set us free. The stairs creaked ominously under my feet as I made my way to the attic. Each step felt like a decision, a chance to turn back that I knew I wouldn't take. The whispers grew louder as I ascended, a chorus of desperate pleas that seemed to emanate from the very walls. At the top of the stairs, I faced a door, old paint peeling with a tarnished brass knob. My hand trembled as I reached for it, hesitating for just a moment before turning it. The door swung open with a groan that seemed to echo through the entire house. The attic was a cavernous space, illuminated only by the pale moonlight filtering through a small, grimy window. Dust motes danced in the air, stirred by my entrance. The room was cluttered with forgotten relics, old furniture draped in sheets, boxes stacked haphazardly, and trunks that hadn't been opened in decades. Where do I start? I whispered to the empty air, as if in response. A cold breeze swept through the room, rustling papers and lifting the corner of a sheet, covering what looked like an old mirror. Drawn to it, I pulled the sheet away, coughing as dust billowed around me. The mirror was tall, reaching from floor to ceiling, its ornate frame tarnished and chipped. But it wasn't my reflection that caught my attention. In the glass, I saw the room as it might have been a century ago. Clean, organized, with a large desk dominating the space. And seated at that desk was a man. He was middle-aged, with a stern face and cold eyes that seemed to bore into me even through the barrier of time. He was writing something, his quill scratching across paper with furious intensity. I leaned closer, trying to make out the words. Suddenly, the man looked up, straight at me. A cruel smile spread across his face, and he mouthed words I couldn't hear, but understood all the same. "You'll never find them." I stumbled back with a gasp, and the vision in the mirror vanished, leaving only my own pale, frightened face staring back at me. "The desk," I murmured, turning to scan the attic. "There has to be a desk here somewhere." I began searching, moving boxes, and uncovering furniture. After what felt like hours, I found it. A massive oak desk, shoved into a corner and buried under years of accumulated junk. My hands shook as I cleared it off, revealing a surface scarred by time and use. I ran my fingers along the edges, searching for hidden compartments or secret drawers. Nothing. Frustration mounting, I began pulling open drawers, rifling through old papers and yellowed photographs. In the bottom drawer, beneath a false bottom that took all my strength to pry up, I found a leather-bound journal. The pages were brittle with age, the handwriting spidery and difficult to read. But as I skimmed the entries, my blood ran cold. The journal belonged to Dr. Elias Blackwood, the man I'd seen in the mirror. He wrote of his experiments in chilling detail, how he lured people to the house, promising cures for ailments or solutions to their problems. But instead of help, they found only pain and death at his hands. Tears streamed down my face as I read account after account of his victims. Men, women, children, no one was spared his madness. And with each life he took, he became convinced he was closer to unlocking the secrets of immortality. The final entry caught my eye. "They're coming for me. The fools in town have finally realized what I've been doing, but they'll never find the evidence. I've hidden it all where no one will ever look. My work will live on, waiting for someone worthy to continue it." I closed the journal, feeling sick. This was the truth Emily and the others wanted me to find, but it wasn't enough. There had to be more bodies or other evidence that could finally bring closure to this century-old tragedy. As if responding to my thoughts, the whispers returned, more urgent than ever. They seemed to be coming from the walls themselves. I pressed my ear against the old wallpaper, listening intently. Yes, there was something there, a hollow sound. With sudden clarity, I understood. The evidence wasn't behind the walls, it was in them. I looked around frantically for something to use, and spotted an old fireplace poker leaning against the wall. Without hesitation, I grabbed it and swung at the wall where the whispers were loudest. The old plaster crumbled easily, revealing a space behind. And in that space, I saw the glint of bones. A scream built in my throat as I realized the full horror of what I'd uncovered. The entire house was a tomb, the walls filled with the remains of Blackwood's victims. Their spirits had been trapped here all this time, unable to rest, waiting for someone to uncover the truth. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the attic window, I sank to my knees, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what lay before me. I had found the truth, but this was only the beginning. Now, I had to make sure justice was finally served, no matter how long overdue. The whispers surrounded me once more, but this time they were different. Grateful, relieved, and tinged with hope. I felt a small, cold hand on my shoulder, and looked up to see Emily's spectral form smiling at me. "Thank you," she said softly. "You've taken the first step, but there's still more to do." I nodded, standing on shaky legs. I had a long day ahead of me, calling the police, dealing with investigators, and ensuring that the victims of 42 Willow Street would finally have their stories told. As I made my way downstairs to make the call that would change everything, I realized that my life would never be the same. I had come to this house looking for a fresh start, but instead, I'd found a purpose: to bring light to a long-buried darkness and to set the trapped souls free. The whispers followed me, no longer frightening but comforting. I wasn't alone in this. Together, we would make sure that justice, long delayed, would finally be served. The next few weeks passed in a blur of police sirens, forensic teams, and news reporters. The quiet street I had chosen for its peaceful charm became the center of a media frenzy. House of Horrors discovered, the headline screamed. Century-old serial killer case reopened. I watched from the sidelines as they carefully excavated the walls, cataloging each grim discovery. The body count kept rising, far beyond what even I had imagined. The whispers had gone quiet, but I could feel the presence of the spirits watching, waiting. Detective Sarah Reeves, the lead investigator, approached me one evening as I stood on the front lawn, watching the last of the day's activity wind down. We've identified over 50 victims so far, she said, her voice heavy with the weight of the information. Men, women, children. The youngest was only 4 years old. She paused, studying my face. How did you know where to look? I hesitated. How could I explain the truth without sounding completely insane? I had a feeling, I said lamely. The house, it just felt wrong. And then I found the journal in the attic. Reeves nodded, though I could see the skepticism in her eyes. That journal is going to be crucial evidence. Dr. Blackwood detailed every murder, every experiment. It's chilling stuff. What happens now? I asked. Now, we try to identify as many victims as we can, notify their descendants, give them the closure they've been denied for so long. She sighed. It's going to be a long process. As she walked away, I felt a familiar chill in the air. Emily appeared beside me, her form barely visible in the fading light. It's not over, she whispered. He's still here. My blood ran cold. Blackwood? But he's been dead for. His body died, but his spirit remained, bound to this place by his evil deeds. Emily's eyes were wide with fear. He's angry that you've discovered his secrets. He'll try to stop you, to keep his victims trapped here forever. I glanced around nervously, suddenly feeling exposed on the open lawn. What can we do? There's a ritual, Emily said. A way to banish his spirit and free us all. But it's dangerous. He'll fight you every step of the way. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Tell me what I need to do. Emily began to explain, her voice low and urgent. We would need specific items: salt, sage, candles, and something personal of Blackwood's. The ritual had to be performed at midnight on the new moon, in the attic where his evil had begun. As she spoke, the air around us grew colder. The streetlights flickered, and a low, menacing growl seemed to emanate from the house itself. He knows, Emily gasped. Hurry! I ran inside, my heart pounding. The house felt different now, malevolent. Shadows seemed to reach for me as I dashed up the stairs. In the attic, I frantically gathered what I needed, stuffing items into a bag. A deep, cruel laugh echoed through the room. Foolish child, a voice rasped. You think you can undo my work? I whirled around to see a figure forming in the center of the room. It was Blackwood, but twisted, his features distorted by hatred and madness. You're too late, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Your crimes have been exposed. Your victims will find peace. Never, he roared. The room shook, dust raining down from the rafters. They are mine for eternity. I felt invisible hands grab me, lifting me off my feet. I was flung against the wall, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. As I struggled to stand, Blackwood's spirit advanced on me, his eyes burning with otherworldly malice. I'll add you to my collection, he hissed. Your soul will join theirs in endless torment. But as he reached for me, A bright light filled the room. The spirits of his victims appeared, forming a protective circle around me. Emily stood at the forefront, her small form radiating a fierce determination. "No more," she said, her voice ringing with power. "Your reign of terror ends now." Blackwood howled in rage, lashing out with dark tendrils of energy. The spirits stood firm, their combined light pushing him back. I seized the moment, my hands shaking as I began the ritual Emily had taught me. I sprinkled salt in a circle, lit the sage, and began to chant the words of banishment. Blackwood's spirit writhed and twisted, fighting against the power of the ritual. "You can't destroy me," he shrieked. "I am eternal." The house groaned and shuddered around us, as if it too was fighting against the evil that had infested it for so long. I continued the chant, my voice growing stronger with each word. As I reached the final phrase, I locked eyes with Blackwood. For a moment, I saw the fear behind his anger, the fear of facing judgment for his crimes. "By the light of truth and the power of justice," I intoned, "I banish you from this plane. Your victims are free, and you will face the consequences of your actions." A blinding flash filled the room. Blackwood's spirit let out one final terrible scream before imploding in on itself, vanishing in a swirl of dark mist. The silence that followed was profound. The oppressive atmosphere that had permeated the house lifted, replaced by a sense of peace I had never felt before. One by one, the spirits of Blackwood's victims began to fade, their faces serene as they moved on to whatever awaited them beyond this life. Emily was the last to go. "Thank you," she said, her form already growing transparent. "We can rest now." As she disappeared, I sank to my knees, exhausted but triumphant. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the attic window, I made a silent promise to those who had suffered in this house. Their stories would be told, their lives remembered, and 42 Willow Street, once a place of unimaginable horror, would become a testament to the enduring power of truth and the triumph of light over darkness.